Hello and welcome to our stream today. My name is Michael, and I am the game master for Table Fables. Table Fables is an interactive TTRPG stream. So we make our games to where you, as the people in the audience, are able to contribute, hopefully in meaningful ways, to our story. And I'm joined today by Chris and Colin, who are party members of Table Fables. So we thought we would come together and that we would, try to help the community as a whole learn a new game system. And right now, the timing, there's no reason about that.
Nothing
Nothing
at all.
spurred us on to do this, or like maybe some nonsense with an OGL and like ostracizing an entire huge hundreds of thousands of people from your audience, like nothing like that. So it's just coincidence, right? But in all seriousness, yeah, I've really loved Pathfinder so far. We actually switched to it before all of this, and yeah, what do you guys think? I don't know. I don't want to speak for you.
So I've been as far as like what's it called core rules. I mean, like in D&D, I've really primarily played with just first party content. I haven't been a huge fan of like trying to seek out and use various other like third party rulebooks and stuff, which is something that like this whole experience has like brought to my attention. Something that I'm like, oh well, maybe I really should give those a shot and do more of that. But what I've seen with the Pathfinder, even the core rules in Pathfinder and the core adventures in Pathfinder are like that level of quality, and like the rules aren't. You're not sitting there like, oh, let me find a rule supplement for whatever, or like let me just keep on doing things on the fly. It's like if you want to, there is a core rule for what you're looking for, and I've just really enjoyed it as like a actual system provided by a company to play their
Mm-hmm.
game, and so
I don't want to
strong
get too
recommendation.
I don't want to get too far ahead, but like before the stream started, we were even talking about how, we've been playing for months now, and I just realized in the game mastery guide there's mechanics for, oh, you want to create your own monsters for Pathfinder? Here is a great framework to do that. And here's how you can play test it and balance it. And oh, you want to have chases in your game and do a heist and an infiltration? Well, here's literally rules on and mechanics on how to do that. And that is, Chris, I mean, all three of us, we have DM'd plenty of D&D games, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not having to use the brain power to come up with a custom mechanic to do that is amazing. Because a couple Halloweens ago, I actually ran a one-shot here at my house. And if you guys remember, it was on the train. It was like Murder on the Eberron Express or whatever. And that was a cool setting that I got off the DMs Guild, but there were no rules for like how to do that kind of thing. So anyway, Colin, what about you?
It's been interesting to go through the core rules and see actions for everything. At first, it's daunting because you think like, oh, well, I just want to like do this thing. It's minor. There's no way that there's going to be a rule for that. There is. They've thought about it. It has a mechanical use, so that can be. I don't know. That can be confusing. That can be daunting. That can be something that at first you're like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, I just want to use a broom as a broom is intended, but you find use a broom as an action later, or like they have specific things for like crawling mechanics, stuff like that, which doesn't exist in D&D to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to find it, but I know I've had players, or I myself, I've had characters that have had to do that of like, can I shoot a spell if I lay down and shoot it through this person's legs? And the DM at the time was kind enough to let me do that, but there will be written workarounds for things like that in Pathfinder.
Well, and even like one of my favorite actions so far that I've just happened to discover is hunker down, which is just a it's a cool concept of being able to make yourself smaller on the field of battle and get it. You get an advantage for that. Like you versus just trying to hide or just dropping prone.
Yeah, I really like that it puts like so one of the one philosophy for how to like look at the rules for a game is that like rules are intended to help um arbitrate between the DM and the players, not necessarily like adversaries, but it's like, hey, I want to do something. Like, you always get the player like, hey, can I just slit the guy's throat while he's asleep? It's like, well, you're gonna do like 1d4 damage. Like, like that's like that is a rule that arbitrates that conflict. And in 5e, it's like, hey, I want to like fall to the ground and try to like roll behind this thing and like shoot a spell at somebody. And it's like, sure, you walk half of your speed, you are now prone, which is disadvantage to you, and you attack them, sure. But in like Pathfinder, it's like there's like actually rules for like, oh yeah, you drop to prone. Like there's actually rules for you gain armor class. Like the to make the situation make sense, like mechanically, like, oh well, aren't I hiding behind the slow barrier? It's like there's actual black and white mechanics that explain how all that happened, and you don't have to sit there either saying, well, I'm going to be a mean DM and just tell them what the rules are and say, sorry, the cool thing you did is stupid, but you don't, or be stuck in a situation where you have to then like on the fly make something up, and then now you've established a mechanic that's like super broken, and they do it in every campaign. It's like, or every fight. So Pathfinder simplifies a lot of that by just saying, here's the rule.
That's something that Austin is another party member, and he wasn't able to be with us this morning, but that's something he posted on Twitter yesterday. Actually, it was just something about like, not having to guess about what you're doing. So yeah, I would agree. I think all of that has been great. I'm currently multitasking, sharing the link to this video on all the social medias because I forgot to do that. And is my mouse too loud? I'm really conscious of that now.
I think you're fine.
Cool. But yeah, it does have a low. It seems like it has a higher barrier of entry than other games that are made by a company like that. I'm gonna call Liches of the Beach.
Coastal Wizards.
Yeah, because they're not worthy of being called their former name anymore. But the barrier of entry to Pathfinder, and also just to be clear, like we're going to be playing other games on our channel. Like we're not just trying to evangelize one game necessarily. Like I have this that I'm going to be working through this weekend, the starter set for Call of Cthulhu. Colin and I got onto a stream like on YouTube of some famous creators that had done a Call of Cthulhu game, and it piqued our interest. I already had the starter set, and I was like, duh, we should do this. It looks really fun. But our main game, right, that is Pathfinder. So I feel like we have a little bit of room to speak into it. So the barrier of entry is crazy low. It does have a little more crunchiness than maybe the game by the Wizards, but I feel like translates just as easy if you've already played 5e, or even like it honestly I think can be really easy to learn as a new player. You just have to know where to start. So where do you start? Well, you can start by either getting the books, or all of the rules are actually available for free. Like not like the Pirate Bay free, like free. Like you can go to a website called Archives of Nethys, which looks like this. And all of the rules you need to get started are on here. And in fact, see this little new to Pathfinder 2nd edition? Click here. And congratulations, you can now get started. Now, this isn't like visually the best, but it's amazing. It's literally free. Another great option that is still in the early stages is Pathfinder Nexus from Demiplane. So I can even show you. I've got a couple books on here. I just haven't bought all of them yet because it's not ready for prime time. And so, oh, all right. they've had such an influx of I've been interacting with their team on Twitter a lot, and they've had such an influx of people because of all this OGL crap that their website is like they haven't done any optimizations yet. And Chris, you would
Yeah.
but no optimizations because this is an alpha/beta website, and now they're like, oh, okay. I actually like tweeted them and I said, this is what I imagine the Demiplane team feels like right now, working around the clock to serve the RPG community. And it's like the cat typing. It's like the GIF of the cat typing on a keyboard where it's like,
yeah, yep.
And they thought that was pretty funny. But this has a much better interface. It's the actual book, which I mean, you're buying the book, so But Adam Bradford, who leads Demiplane, and we're not affiliated with him at all, just to be clear, but Adam Bradford, who leads Demiplane, he was the founder of D&D Beyond. Like, not just worked there, like he started it, he built it, and he made it the tool that it was when it was acquired by Wizards of the Coast. After Wizards bought them, Adam left for some reason, and I think we know why he left now. But this is going to be an awesome tool. It's not ready yet. The book function works great. So if you just want to use it as a digital reader for now, go for it. The books are slightly cheaper. If you buy the PDF from Paizo first, you actually get a good discount too. But as you can see, I have access to the early access to the character builder, which I'll show you guys real quick. This is, every time you open it, you have to acknowledge the fact that this is an alpha. And so I've been told that over the coming weeks, they're going to be rapidly improving this because they have to.
Yep.
But so I already, it's just this view because I'm on a small little screen over here. But I kind of just built this out as a quick test. But just an example, like spells are not in here yet. So like literally the entire spell compendium is missing. But the basic functions and little things like the font colors are not correct. If that, it's an alpha. They're still, they got this out as fast as they could so we could start alpha testing it. And so far I've been really impressed. It has kind of all of the classic things that most people probably loved about D&D Beyond. Plus honestly, I think it's a little cleaner. You can do your dice rolls if you want. But yeah, this is going to be awesome. And I think we fully plan to utilize it for Table Fables once it's ready, maybe. We have another tool that I need to figure out a better way to show you for reasons, but it's Foundry Virtual Tabletop.
Michael's racking his brain for how can I show them Foundry without spoiling anything for our games.
Like I can.
Well, I also don't. I host Foundry on DigitalOcean, and it has a public URL, and I don't want anyone to have that URL. And I can't figure out how to crop my screen in.
I can.
In Melon.
I may have discarded my old Foundry.
But anyway. The barrier to entry is really low. You can get started completely for free using Archives of Nethys. And there's other tools that I'll talk about later, and I'm going to do that strategically because I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But one of them is called Path Builder, and it's a free character builder online. If you have an Android phone, there's an Android version of it in app form, or there's a web browser based version, and I'll show you guys that, and I'll put a link to it in the chat later. And I'll also I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat too. But the barrier to entry is so low. I would recommend getting the core rulebook because it lays it out in a way that really makes sense, better than just like the text version of Archives of Nethys. That being said, everything is on Archives of Nethys. You have your character sheet, which we'll get to in a little bit.
And I think that Archives of Nethys can be really good for is like as a DM, you can get the book, get more familiar with it in the more like narrative, longer form version, and then as you're like walking your players through it, they can use Archives of Nethys as a reference without needing to worry about necessarily having their own copies of PDF, which again can make it easier for you to onboard your team, saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try Pathfinder. Here's the gist of it. I've got a book. Feel free to follow along. Here's where you can look up your references."
Yeah, definitely. I um I hate that I keep using low barrier to entry, but there really is like there. So I'm gonna go over 3 books real quick that I think are key. Like starting out, you're switching to Pathfinder, you want to try it out. Honestly, first and foremost, actually would be the Pathfinder beginner box, which I do have somewhere, but I couldn't find it before we started. The beginner box, it is, I would say, 90% of Pathfinder, condensed into one adventure that you can run as one shot, to get your players up to speed. So it's built in a way that like it teaches you the mechanics as you go. Like it has several encounters, but each encounter is meant to teach your players those skills, or like, you how to do things for the first time. So it starting out, the room that they drop you in, you're meant to investigate. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but we actually played through it on this you can find it on YouTube, on our YouTube. We did it more in a story form. Like I changed it because I figured we were familiar enough with how systems work, and I felt confident enough. I was overconfident, but I felt confident enough that I could explain things. And then we had moments where one of our players said he was fishing beforehand and had a fish in his hands, and then we're up sitting there narrating something, and he just goes because the fish was flopping around. So that one shot ended up being a 3 shot. And but yeah, I say 90% Pathfinder because 90% because the rules are slightly different, but only just barely. So mainly it has to do with skills. Like it's meant to be a little bit more simplified. And then when you go from the beginner box and jump into a regular, like a good segue from the beginner box is actually the oh man, what's it? It's under Otari. My son is jamming out in the background to the Mario Kart. Makes my heart proud. There's tons of adventure paths and things like that. So like I'm building a completely like custom from scratch setting, and it does kind of like overlap with Galarian, but in a multiverse kind of way, if that makes sense. But there's tons of adventures. And from the beginner box, you can jump into gosh, I promise it's here somewhere, but well, Troubles in Otari, I think is what it's called. Sorry, that took me entirely too long to find. Yes. So the beginner box, you're in Otari already. So it's like a natural stepping point into doing a full, kind of a campaign from there. And you can even use the same player, like the same characters. They are like the heroic, or like they're pre-generated characters, but you get the gist. So, but the 3 books are the core rules. It's pretty thick. It's a little intimidating, but don't let it be intimidating, because I actually have a handy dandy little breakdown. There's a guy called he has a podcast called Legend of the Rules Lord, which is a great play on words for a Pathfinder adventure path called Legend of the Rune
Rune
Lords. Yeah, it's great. But he broke it down literally into percentages of what this book contains, because this book is, for context, it is as thick as the player's handbook and the DM's guide from D&D. Michael, that sounds incredibly crazy and scary. How am I supposed to learn that many rules? How can it be? You're saying it's easy, but the book is over 600 pages long. Well, the biggest chunk of this book is classes. So like literally the details of what your players or what you as a player can play as. 26% of this book is classes. Another about 20% is spells. But actual like playing the game, the rules portion of this book is only 6% of the book. So I mean, you know, that's hardly anything, because again, it's not that hard. And then another like almost 15% of the book is crafting and treasure, which is awesome, because who doesn't like some good loot and some shiny objects, right? So that's the first book. The second book is the Advanced Player's Guide. Chris, I agree. The whole like it not mirroring the screen like normal is throwing me
Very
off.
disorienting. Yeah.
But anyway, Advanced Player's Guide. This one I would recommend for any players. Definitely game masters. But the big thing here is it gives you an expansion to ancestries, backgrounds, classes, and everything from there on. So in Pathfinder, the way you build a character is using the ABCs, ancestry, background, class. And you know, in other game systems, they might give you a background, but it doesn't really mean anything. I'm not talking about any game system in particular here. But in Pathfinder, your background really does affect things, because it gives you different either bonuses or background feats, things like that. But in this, you've got cat folk, kobold, orc, rat folk, tengu. It gives you the ability to do versatile heritages like a changeling, a dampier, or planar scions. But it also has different. Oh man, I know it's in here. Different classes, but there's also other sub heritages like Colin, your flea is a human, but he's also I'm having a brain fart.
Starts with a D.
Yeah, I know it does. I want to say shadow, but I know that's not right. It's a Duskwalker. There you go. I was gonna say Shadow Walker, and I was like, that's not right. That's not right. It's a Duskwalker. So that's cool. But then also it gives you additional classes. And so you've got Investigator, Oracle, Swashbuckler, Witch, Alchemist, Barbarian. You have all of the regular ones too, but Investigator, Oracle, Swashbuckler. Those are cool and really flavorful. Don't play an Oracle if you're just starting out.
Yeah. Don't
Colin
do it.
has learned that the hard way.
Don't do it. I was like, I've got this really cool character idea. I can totally do it. Don't do it.
But on the flip side of that, be on the lookout, because we're working on some additional rules or changes, I guess, to the Oracle to make it a little more playable, in our opinion. And we haven't played for a few weeks, but Colin is in live on stream play testing that for you guys. So specifically, you're playing the Ancestors Oracle, right?
Oracle of Ancestors, yes.
Yeah.
And that one, like, oracles are kind of a like, hey, maybe this is hard, maybe don't do it for your first. Oracle of Ancestors is for sure like, don't do this for your first character.
Yeah.
It's just gonna hurt.
It's probably the hardest thing. It's one of the hardest things in the whole game to play, because it kind of makes you miss Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a way. Then I won't go too far into archetypes and everything, but there's also one thing too. So the core classes for this game are a little different than in D&D, for example, because I know a lot of you are going to be switching from D&D most likely. Well, there's a one pager in the book that lays them all out. Also, just a side note, I freaking love the art direction that Paizo uses. I think it's so good. And I like that there's so much more than in some other games. Not naming names or pointing fingers, but like every other page has tons of art. Okay, so the core classes are going to be Alchemist, Barbarian, Bard, Champion. Champion you can think of as Paladin. Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Monk. Pretty standard, right? Ranger, which doesn't suck. Rogue, Sorcerer, Wizard. Now, just to be clear, the Sorcerer in Pathfinder is not similar to the Sorcerer in Pathfinder or in D&D. The Sorcerer in Pathfinder is blood magic. Think of it that way, which Colin actually could play to the thing that you've been working on if you want to just borrow some content that was released under the OGL 1.0A.
Girl, there you go.
So that's in the core rulebook. Those are the classes that come with the core rulebook. In the advanced player's guide, that's where you get Investigator, Oracle, and Witch. Witch, I would say, is actually the closest class to the D&D Sorcerer. You cast spells and hexes learned through a powerful familiar from a mysterious patron.
That's somewhere between like a sorcerer and a warlock.
Yes. Yeah, that's so it's pretty much both. That's also what I was going to say is there's no direct warlock correlation, and which kind of takes both of the way that class works in D&D and kind of puts them together. So, yeah, Swashbuckler is cool. You know, you essentially are fancy on your feet, and you earn something called panache through the showy acts during combat that you can then use to help you along the way. So that's the second book I'd recommend. And if you ever game master or are, you know, if you've been the dungeon master for your group, definitely get the Gamemastery guide. You don't need it. There's an entire section in the core rules called game mastering. That's very thorough. And between that and the chapter on playing the game, that's everything you should need to know. But the Gamemastery guide, I didn't even fully appreciate until last night when I was looking through the amount of stuff that's in here. So how to adjudicate special circumstances, how to use rarity in your game, how to structure your campaign to make it interesting. Of course, there's encounter design, map design, but then also there's chapter 2 is called tools, and building creatures is an entire section of this chapter, which kind of blew my mind. Like, it kind of walks you step by step through how to build your own monsters, which not everybody is going to do, but I actually am interested in. So it gives you here an overview of like, okay, step 1, develop your concept. They prefer using what they call top-down design, which is a little different than I think how some people develop NPCs or even their characters. But you just come up with a concept. Okay, cool. I want a creature that is, half mermaid, half caterpillar. But that's your concept. And then you decide, do I want it to be good or bad or neutral? Then you go through and, okay, well, what level is it? Alignment, everything. What traits should it have? What, ability, how it kind of gives you how to come up with ability modifiers, depending on if it is a world shattering based on level, it gives you 4 different tiers of modifier scales, which they call extreme, high, moderate, low. Low would be like a negative, like this is not even a challenge, right? Even depending on the level, it's still, this is the easiest monster you're going to face at that level. All the way to extreme, which would be like earth-shattering type monster of like, you probably aren't going to survive this. And yeah, Nick, I agree. I think it's awesome. So that's one tool. There's tons of tools in here. And honestly, for that reason, I would recommend this to players too, if you're interested in homebrew at all, because of that, because it has like so many different tools on how to actually do this kind of stuff. So there's creatures, hazards, how to build custom items, how to make intelligent items, how to make cursed items, how to make relics. And if I remember correctly, relics are essentially magic items that only have one. Yes.
He's got to
I'm gonna restart my computer. Give me 1 second.
Uh-oh. Okay. A relic is a crazy strong magic item that grows with the character. So think of it as a magic item that levels up with the character. Anyway, but all that's included in that chapter. My daughter's super excited. And then there's a chapter on subsystems. So that could be extra mechanics that you don't have to use. But let's say you want to have a chase scene, which is dope. There's a mechanic for how to do a chase scene. There's influence, research, chase, infiltration, reputation, duels, leadership, and hexploration, which would be like continent level exploring. And there's also one called victory points, which is interesting because...
And for any of these topics, these are rules that help you adjudicate one of these scenarios, so that you don't have to like make something up on your own. You don't have to worry about it being balanced or necessarily fair, because that's something that has already been thought for by Paizo. And so whenever you find yourself in those times, you can just use these sorts of rules and say, hey, this will help this roll out, instead of you being like, oh wait, my monk moves substantially faster than everything else now, or this scene, I have to find a way to sandbag them or something.
So this one's cool. This is called victory points. Victory points gives you a mechanic that your players can use to track their progress in the campaign. So if there's goals or if there's marks that they should be hitting, this gives you a mechanic of how they can accumulate them or lose them. So forward or backward progress. So
And yeah, having systems that can help you just be more confident in running a game like that, or even give you ideas like maybe you're daunted by the idea of running like an Ocean's 11 in a world where magic wards exist, but like, you know, that's something that would be super crazy awesome to do with a group of players, and having rules that help you do that on a macro level not only can help inspire your build, but also then help inform and run those.
Well, so I'll give you, this is under the influence category. It literally gives you 2 different actions that you can do to try to gain influence over somebody. And one of them is called, influence. You attempt to make a favorable impression on an NPC. Choose an NPC and attempt a skill check to impress that NPC. The DC and whether success is possible depends on the NPC's preferences. So on a critical success, you gain 2 influence points. Success, you gain 1. Failure, you gain none. Critical failure, you lose 1. So yeah, just having those extra things is pretty cool. And I'm letting Colin back in. Welcome back, Colin.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, kids. Hello. Oh, yeah, you can't hear Mario? Oh. So yeah, those are the 3 kind of core books that I would recommend starting out. But, you know, you can get them in hardback or PDF. An awesome thing about Paizo is they sell all their books as a watermarked PDF. So like it literally like burns your name and email address and IP address and all this stuff into the bottom for anti-piracy reasons, which I totally get and everything. But those 3 books, and you don't need all 3 of them at once, or the beginner's box and the core rule book, whatever it is, that's where I would start. There are several differences within switching too. and that's the next part of what I wanted to talk about. The big difference is going from something like D&D to specifically D&D, because that's, it's the most popular system, to Pathfinder. And on a high level, those differences are going to be the action economy. So in D&D, you get one action. You might have multiple attacks, and you might have, action surge and all this stuff, but that all falls under one action, right? So you get an action, reaction, a bonus action, and a reaction, essentially, in most people in D&D. In Pathfinder, you have 3 actions. It's all kind of carved around what they call the 3-action economy. So you get 3 actions, you get a reaction, and then you get free actions, which is also a thing in D&D. Your free actions being, there's literally a whole list of them in the book. But that could be speaking out of turn in combat, right? If your game master allows that, or whatever.
Dropping something you're holding, or
yes, dropping something is a free action, but picking something up or drawing a new weapon, however, is not. So that's the difference too. Like, I think technically in D&D there are rules. This is that I never used them. That's why I'm saying I think, but I think there are rules about like drawing weapons, and how that's supposed to work, but or like changing. But that's a literal mechanic in Pathfinder. So you've got those 3 actions. But what does that really mean? So like, let's say you're a spellcaster in D&D, you can pretty much only ever cast one spell. Ever. In Pathfinder, you technically can cast multiple spells if you can. And I say that because it's not always... most spells take 2 actions. But you might have a cantrip that's 1 action, and then you could do an attack spell for 2 actions. It just depends. That gets into another difference, which is the MAP, multiple attack penalty. So let's say you're a martial class. You're a fighter. You're a barbarian. You swing a sword or an axe or something, or shoot a bow. You can use all 3 of those actions to attack, which is cool, but you're going to be penalized for it in a fair way to make it balanced. Of like, you can't just keep hammering away at the foes or at whoever you're trying to attack. And the way it works is it starts at, you get your first attack that is with your bonus, whatever your bonus on that attack is. So that could be +5, +10, whatever. Numbers are much bigger. We'll get to that in a minute as well, because that's a big difference. I think that Colin still has to wrap his mind around, like number differences, right? Yeah. So you get your first attack with your full bonus, and then the way it works is the next attack, that's where the penalty begins. And the regular version of that is -5. So you're making your strike with a -5 penalty. Then if you decide, because you're a barbarian and you have no brain, I'm going to use my third attack because that's all I can do, and I'm raging and I'm here in the moment, that's -10. So there are times that might work. And if you are a tanky martial class that is in the middle of the fight, absolutely go for it. But as a whole, I wouldn't recommend that. It's not a great use of the action economy, but you can, because it's your game. You can do what you want, and that's the beauty of it. So, hey, shout out to the people on Twitter that are resharing this video. Thank you. Because we're also live on Twitter, because I didn't know that was the thing that we could do. So yeah, -10 sucks, but it's possible. It's a way that they've balanced the system. So numbers, that's different. The DC for a pretty mediocre thing could be 15. Whereas I feel like if it's a mediocre thing, that's going to be a DC of 10 in D&D usually. Or if it's easy, that's going to be a DC of like 5 or, somewhere in there. Whereas in Pathfinder, usually an easy DC is still going to be a 10. And that is just because the way that the skills system works is different. So you have not only do you have your skills, which are based on your modifiers for like your core things, but you also can be trained, expert, master, legendary, which influences your score. So like if you're trained, that's a +2. If you're an expert, that's a +4. If you're a master, that's a +6. And then if you're legendary, that's +8, I think. If I'm wrong, let me know in the chat. I'm just winging it here off memory. So we're only level 1 in our campaign. So we haven't gotten that far. We haven't gotten beyond trained or expert. But essentially it increases your proficiency at that thing. So that is the sliding scale. So your proficiency is either +0, +2, +4, so on. It's in increments of 2. And so because of that, the way that I perceive this, and you two can tell me if you see it differently or think differently of it, it's you are rewarded for your character decisions that much more in Pathfinder than some other games. And so if you really want to focus on being trained and like really good at crafting, you can be crazy good at crafting. So rolling a 30 or a 35, even at level 1 or 2, isn't that far-fetched. And so because of that, the scale of success and failure is a lot higher and lower at the same time. And I view it as a way that you as a player are rewarded for your character choices. And I'm just trying to make sure I don't talk over you guys if I leave a little space like that.
I was gonna say I think that the I don't recall the advances. I think the out of the gate, like level 1, the highest you can get is mastery.
Yes. No, it's expert, I think. Yeah. So out of the gate, the highest you can be is expert.
Aren't there like feats or something that can?
Oh, probably.
I remember playing around with like if you go absurd, I think, and that means you get like a +6 or something. Or
yeah,
on top of
I wouldn't recommend that out of the gate because there's
there's
better uses of those feats.
Yeah, but
and
I was
also
gonna say hitting 35 sounds nigh. Like you'd have to have your nat 20 on like a 15 modifier or in order to do that.
There's a lot more feats. That's different too. You've got skill feats, general feats, class feats, bonus feats, ancestral feats, but they all do different things.
Yeah. And what that can kind of boil down to is like having sorry, when it comes to like D&D, normally you choose your subclass, and that is like the end of your character personalization, your character build, outside of like possibly feat choices like once every 4 levels, and possibly spell choices depending on what things are. Where like in Pathfinder, as you're leveling up, you get access to all different sorts of feats, so you kind of have like you can piecemeal basically several subclasses together into like whatever your character wants to be. Like the druid has like one branch that is like an animal companion archetype, and the other one is like the wild shape into like a T-Rex, which is a thing you can do in Pathfinder, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And without needing to convince your DM that you've seen a T-Rex before.
To be clear, in our world of Agios, I've not clarified if dinosaurs exist, but
gotcha. Anyways, so you can have either of those. Those would be like subclasses in D&D, but in Pathfinder, it's like I'm gonna take the animal companion feat, and at level 2, I'm gonna take the like whatever order something, and it lets you take a different order at the first one, and like okay, I can now turn into T-Rexes, and I have a dire wolf like that follows me around. And like you can just do way more customization than is traditionally allowed in popular gaming systems.
I remember a year and a half ago or so, there's a pretty big D&D influencer. He kind of has fallen off. Like he doesn't make as many videos anymore, and he's not as popular as he was a couple of years ago. But it's Talking D20. His name's Cody. and I'm not trying to call anybody out or point fingers or anything, but he was invited to be a playtester and early on involved with Pathfinder Second Edition. And he came out with this video that's like, I'm quitting Pathfinder. And it was all about, like, he was saying you have an illusion of choice. And I, along with, I haven't seen a single person agree with him, honestly, to be fair. Didn't agree with that. Because he was saying, like, I have a druid that can wild shape into a brontosaurus or something, but he has to do the same exact attacks every time to be optimal, to make sure he rolls the highest and all this stuff. And to some degree, you're always going to have an optimal combination of attacks in any system. Doesn't matter what system it is. But
Eldritch Blast.
Yeah, exactly. Just go watch season 2 of Critical Role. Ford, it's your turn. Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
But it's not an illusion. You have so many choices, and it can be overwhelming, honestly, the number of choices you can really make to influence your character. But the way that I look at it, and I hope that you guys look at it, and anybody watching this making a character looks at it, is these choices craft your character to be exactly what you want and unique. And so if you hear some really loud crunching, it's because my dog decided just now to eat his food that's beside me. So but I couldn't disagree with his video more than I do because of that. Like, that's one of the things that drew me to Pathfinder to begin with, is like, wow, there's so much here to make my job easier as a game master, but also as a player. Like, I haven't been able to play in a game, honestly, yet, but like, just being able to craft the character to be exactly what I want, how I want. Hey, lay down, buddy. Talking to don't worry, it's my kids, not my dog. Hey, lay down. I'm just kidding. It's my dog. Come here. We have like this huge baby gate now that like retracts into the wall to like block our kitchen off from the rest of the house. Hey, lay down. Because my kids are little gremlins, and my dog is also a little gremlin that likes to get up on our kitchen table to steal food. So he's just trapped in here with me right now. But you've got this illusion of choice, apparently, right? But really, you have tons of choice.
Right. It's only an illusion if your DM constantly builds a world where you have to be hyper optimized for it to work.
Literally, my comment on the video when it came out was, Cody, that just means you're a bad game master. Because you should be creating a story where your players can shine. If you have somebody that's really good at investigating, give them a shot to investigate. If you have somebody that has a split personality, give each of their personalities a chance to shine. I'm not talking about anybody specific here. If you have a spellcaster, put him in a world where magic doesn't exist. But no, to be clear, you knew that going into this.
Yep.
That's the whole, without too many spoilers, if you haven't seen our show yet, the world we're playing in is a world without magic. 100 years ago, some kind of calamity happened, and magic, I almost said music. I feel like that would honestly be even worse than if magic disappeared. Magic disappeared. It literally, over like in the blink of an eye, was gone. And along with it, a ton of other things like fey creatures, monsters, things like that. So without being too spoiler, so Chris is playing a new class from the Dark Archives. And so he's getting to learn how to use magic in a world that has very low magic or no magic currently. So
relearn,
yeah. You're playing the psychic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. For some reason, as I was saying that, I was like, that doesn't sound right. Also a somewhat difficult class to play, so I wouldn't recommend that for most first-time people. But
it does kind of feel warlocky in a sense, where you're pretty cantrip heavy, and you have these like the like signature spells. Feels kind of like the Mystic Arcanum, but the Mystic Arcanum, is that what it is? Whatever. But it's it's interesting and different. Yeah. So, but probably not a thing you want to dive into headfirst as an example of like
No.
what as like a normal. It's one of
Hmm.
those like remixed to be like more interesting
Well, and I,
versions
and
of
I,
the
and
same
I
thing.
honestly think that us using Foundry, which I'll touch on more later, maybe in a different video, even do a whole video on it, um, helps you with that because the spells are updated to work with your class.
The amped spells though, I had to do that on my own.
Oh, well,
Yep.
we should look at that again because they've updated it.
Nice.
But anyway, so you have lots of options. Colin is a silly boy that might still be able to hear me, but I wasn't planning on him being able to hear me because he took his headphones off. So, nope, I don't think he can hear me because he's not acknowledging me. So I'm
I
just going to
think
keep
he's
talking
making
about
a
Colin.
poker face about it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, I think he's distracted by something. But yeah, so the rules, they're not scary. It's pretty easy to learn this system. There are differences. You will pick up on them pretty quick. So here, a huge difference is in combat. I feel like encounters have a lot more thought that have to be put into them on my side because the rules of Pathfinder are more tactile. You have to be more tactical with your play. Flanking is an optional rule in D&D that is not an optional rule in Pathfinder. And so if you get somebody flat-footed, that gives them that you are debuffing them, making it harder to defeat them. And combat is way more collaborative, I would say. Like you have to work as a team to really take down foes because it shouldn't be easy, but it also it's a lot more fun when you have to work together, in my opinion. I don't know. I've loved seeing you guys do that, and Austin picked up on that pretty quick, and definitely has used his thaumaturge to that advantage of being able to flank people, make them flat-footed. That's also how you get sneak attack in Pathfinder is when somebody's flat-footed. And so just flat-footed, that was a condition in the older versions of D&D. It's just, it means that you have a little bit of an advantage on them. So that, like, they have like -2 to AC and stuff like that. But oh yeah, degrees of success. I actually that's a big thing. So thank you for that in the chat too. So coming from D&D, to paint a picture, I only ever 5e was my entry into tabletop role-playing games. I had never played anything else before that, unfortunately. My parents grew up during the satanic panic of the 80s. And so when I was a teenager, I want to say 3.5 had come out. And I saw stuff on the internet about it. And I was like, Mom, can I get this? And she said, no, that's the devil's game. And she was joking, but kind of not joking. Just because it had that, she saw that movie with Tom Hanks, the movie. I don't even remember what it's called, but so I never got into this until 5e. But coming from 5e to Pathfinder, the way that the success and failure system, I love. It's one of my favorite things. And so if you're coming from D&D, the way that success and failure works is rolling a 1 probably means you're going to fail something, but it's not a crit failure automatically. It could be, probably will be, but on the flip side of that, rolling a natural 20 doesn't mean you're going to do amazing, but it does mean something. So the way that success or failure for DCs and checks works is a plus or minus system of 10. So if the DC is 15 and you get a 25, that's a critical success. So really good. Something great probably will happen. Like you could potentially, if it's an AoE effect, like an AoE spell, you might take 0 damage actually from that, depending on the exact spell and what it says for that reflex save. On the flip side, you get a 5. That is a critical failure, which is the pretty bad. We play with a fumble deck usually, so if something bad does happen, it does usually just flavorfully. It might make something happen, like you fall prone because you're going to strike somebody and you miss and you fall prone. You don't have to do that. Sometimes we do that.
Really, really practically, I think something that's interesting about the degrees of success is it means that every once in a while, so I had like a pre-level 5 fight in a 5e campaign where someone's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go do this thing. I'm gonna they have like 2-weapon fighting, so they attack with their both weapons, and like everyone's doing all this stuff, and like a fighter term comes up, and they're like, I attack once. Oh, I missed. Okay, and that's like their turn. You can get a similar thing with spells, like, oh, hey, I cast Hold Person. Oh no, they failed the save, or they passed the save or whatever, and you just that is what I did. Is I spent a legendary resist or something like that. That's what you feel like.
Yeah.
In Pathfinder, like fear in Pathfinder, like so the fear spell, it has basically 4 different outcomes that can happen. So if they critically succeed, so they get 10 or higher above the DC, they are unaffected by the fear. Even if they succeed, so they meet the DC, they're frightened 1, so they have like a very minor 1-turn small penalty for that. But if they fail, it's 2, and if they critical fail, it's 3, and they keep running away. So you have this level of like, unless the person actually does good, your spell does something. It can go from doing
So
barely
that's
anything
actually
to
that is
devastating.
an incredible point, because there was a thread that I was part of on Twitter where somebody was like, I don't care what, this was when the OGL stuff kind of first started going down. You don't, the question, it was like, hey, if I'm going to learn a new game system because I'm not going to be playing D&D anymore because of this, what systems are out there where it doesn't feel like players are constantly wasting their turn? And I threw out Pathfinder because of that. Like, very rarely will you do something and it just be a totally wasted turn, unless you're playing in a world where magic is crazy and you have to roll on an additional magic table to do something, and maybe it says, or
or you're fighting something with a 50 armor class or something, and no matter how many times you attack, you're going to miss. Like,
but in addition to that, there's also when earlier in the stream I talked about rewarding character choices and how I feel like the skill system, the way that you can be trained, master, trained, expert, master, legendary, how that all kind of stacks your decisions as a character. I think it's the same for the system of degrees of success. Like, that's how I view it. Like, I feel like it's a very balanced and a really thoughtful mechanic for that reason, because it gives you the chance to really, really screw up or really succeed, instead of just, oh, I did no, yes or no, or half damage, or on the flip side of that, if you have an attack or a spell or a cantrip or something that is based on having to do a check or something first, knowing most likely something at least will happen. You're not wasting one of your 3 actions for no reason. Along with that, the system of success, so like I mentioned, automatically getting a 20 is not a critical success necessarily. Just like a natural 1, that's not, it's not a critical fail, critical success. What's a critical fail or success is +10, -10. Oh, lost Chris. But it does affect the degree of success. So if you roll a 20 on the die, that automatically bumps you up by a degree of success. So if you would have just succeeded something, you critically succeed. If you would have, if you roll a 1 and you would have failed something, you critically fail that something. If that makes sense. So I think it's a great mechanic, and it is a big difference.
And it means you can't have like a half dead, 100% drunk level 1 monk, like, or a commoner. Like in 5e, a commoner has a 5% chance of doing 2 damage to Strahd with a punch. Like, it exists. 5%. Doesn't matter how hard his armor class or whatever it is. It's like, if he's not immune to the damage, whatever. And in with your Pathfinder system, it's like, cool, you roll a 20, your critical failure is now just a failure. Like yeah, it's a system that solves those like a lot of the what's what I'm looking for, sort of logically inconsistent things that the game system from like 5e does. As a DM, if you're like, well, I don't think there should be a 5% chance to hit Strahd, it's like, okay, cool. You have to arbitrarily impose disadvantage, which if they have any advantage, okay, congratulations, you're back to 5%. But it's like you have to make your own. You're in a situation of making your own rule in order for the world to make sense, and Pathfinder has solved that for you by just having rules that make sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like it. I'm glad you asked that question because I actually had it in my notes to talk about as a difference, and I had kind of just totally glossed over it. So keep those questions coming. The question I had asked in the chat to get that is just, what questions do you have about Pathfinder? So Topher JC had said, been playing Pathfinder 1e and 2e for 10 years. So just interesting to hear your thoughts from D&D. How do you feel about degrees of success? That was the question. And absolutely. I can show this on screen? What? Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, hi.
This is a new tool. We've never used this. It's called Melon, melonapp.com. But we have it through the Streamlabs. That's what Streamlabs. Anyway. But yeah, that was a great question. Please, if you have any other questions on differences or just what questions you have about Pathfinder, throw them in the chat here. If you're on Twitter, just tweet me, and hopefully I'll see it because I have that pulled up too, because we're live on Twitter and over on YouTube. So you can find our current campaign on YouTube too, if you care to catch up and care to tell me when I've gotten the rules wrong, because I'm still learning. So so we've covered barrier to entry is really low. The tools are free. So there's Archives of Nethys, which I dropped in the chat up above. And there's also Demiplane if you want to digitally buy the books. Their character builder's not ready yet. And then there is Path Builder for building characters, but I don't want to talk about that yet because I don't want you to use it yet. Because I want you to learn how to make a character on paper first. Because Colin and I talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago, like
recently enough.
Yeah, it was in the last 2 days. When I got into 5e, I got in right as D&D Beyond had kind of crested of like, hey, there's this new tool. It's awesome. You should use it. So my first character, this was before they had all of the rules expansions and like they had all the content on there, but it still had the core stuff, right? And so my first character I ever made was on D&D Beyond, so I didn't really understand how I was putting it together. Which when I really tried to I was trying to understand the mechanics better of like how does my character work? What is my proficiency bonus? What those things do exist on D&D Beyond, like you can see them, but if I would have built my character sheet on paper first, I would have had a better understanding of how that works. So 10 out of 10 recommend doing a paper character sheet first. But yeah, have I missed any differences that you guys have noticed or thought of, or
I don't think
resources?
So. I just again, I like the difference of having your ancestry and your background actually make a difference instead of, I've got players now that whenever it's their first campaign, they're like, oh, classic, I'm royalty and I own an airship to travel around. And I was like, cool. No, you don't. We'll work on that.
Yeah. That's a whole thing we could talk about on another time, is like the wealth system in D&D and like having to select your, because really that actually
like that's fun things to have for a story, but then when you have a first level adventure, it's like, okay, yes, you get to start out with more money than other players and all of those things, but where it makes a difference in Pathfinder is that you have like okay, you have no, you don't get to have those items, but you do have an advantage to like society checks,
Mhm.
things like that.
Mhm.
Of like, oh,
Yeah.
your ancestry of coming from a wealthier background, you now have easier access to these things. You can find and talk to people. You have better connections with the wealthy. You
Which is
and
you
so
could
on and so
use
forth.
to make
Yeah,
money and get an airship
yeah.
and
Instead of
yeah.
just being like, no, you don't have that. You can't do that. Reminder that you're level 1, and that's not what that means.
Yeah. I also think that on the flip side of that, it's like your backgrounds can be like, oh yeah, I am like, oh yeah, I'm this like magically attuned something or other from like uh basically like, oh, you're more sensitive to magic, now you can do detect magic, and like detect magic in Pathfinder is very different, but it like has like a level scaling, so it's like, oh hey, here's this power that kind of like grows with you over time instead of like it being this like fixed thing that exists as this one thing you did whenever you're level 1 forever. And there's also like I think it's one of the backgrounds. I sorry, I might have said like an ancestry or something for the one with the detect magic, but like one of the back, I'm 99% sure that's the background is like, yeah, you used to like be a servant type of person, and because of your position in society, you've like mastered reading lips. It's like, congratulations, if you can see someone speaking a language that you know, you can understand what they're saying
Mhm.
regardless of hearing them. And it's like that's a cool thing that like I feel like whenever you get into the realm of like, oh, you can get a feat because like that is a feat and that's observant lets you do that in 5e, but it's like if you're gonna take a level 1 feat, you're gonna be like, oh, sharpshooter, duh, like let me do, on average 5 more damage or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then your DM has to figure out how to build encounters where sharpshooter is not as much of an advantage because you keep
Right.
murdering things.
Right, where you
Real,
don't have a 600-foot lead time with 2 attacks
yeah,
per turn.
yeah. We were playing an Icewind Dale for our last D&D game, and so
You
oh,
can also ask me
sorry,
to
Colin. I
not.
just saw that about the static.
Yeah. It's been happening for a while. It's just
Oh,
happening real bad right now. So if I have to disconnect, that's why.
gotcha.
Is it coming from us?
No, no,
Oh,
it's been a thing that my computer's done for a long time. I'm
oh,
still trying to figure it out.
oh. Well, sorry.
Yeah,
Hypothetically, exactly.
I will resist my desire to troubleshoot computer problems
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, so that's a lot of big difference. That's some of the differences.
Yeah.
That is some of the tools and some of the
Actually,
books.
I wanna hop on another. Actually, this is like a soft difference between like Pathfinder and 5e, but like, so I'm playing the psychic class in Pathfinder, and there's like a whole section about like basically the origin of like your psychic power, and the psychics have a rule where basically they can substitute somatic and verbal components of spells with, oh sorry, I think it's material and verbal components of spells with like psychic or mental elements essentially. And so there's all sorts of like cool flavor that comes from uh like, oh yeah, when I am a psychic and I cast fear spell, people who see it happen get a chill down their spine. Like that is like a thing that you could do as like it's actually mechanically described in the rules as such. And so there's like I had like designed my character idea from like some, I don't know, I had this like joke character vibe, and then I like slowly became a more traditional character, and a lot of that person's history and arc that I have planned for them is actually designed around the spell descriptions or the class descriptions of like these mechanics around how psychic spellcasting happens. So I feel like it's way more rich than like uh there is dragon blood in your family and you can do magic.
Hmm.
Yay. Like there's just more going on, and
Hmm.
it's it like we described with the like infiltration or chase rules or whatever, is it doesn't have to be verbatim the way the rule is, because that's one of the beauty of TTRPGs, but it will always be a nugget you can build off of. It's always some like source of inspiration, and you can go from there, or whatever. So
Mhm.
I've been very pleased with character building and all of that in it. It's great.
I'm pretty sure. Let's see. It's literally on like one of the first pages of the core rule book. Each player contributes to the story, the flow of the game. Game master, gaming's for all. Anyway, somewhere in the first, I'm pretty sure it's on page 7 somewhere. It literally says like, the rules are here to help you tell a story, not to keep you from telling a story, or something to that effect. Like the rules are what you say they are. But I do love having so much depth to the rules. So for this last bit, I wanted to kind of walk you guys through building a character, maybe, just so you can see what I mean when I say you should be doing it on paper. Or that could be our whole next video, is we build a character on stream, and kind of talk through the decision-making process of doing that. And you better believe, regardless, I'm doing this on paper. I have it printed out. Oh, the mirroring thing, man, it's still screwing with me. Putting it down on paper. There's actually an alternative character sheet that I found that somebody made, the rules lawyer on YouTube had shared it, and it's laid out a little more user friendly. I think we lost. Colin was having audio issues, so. Favorite moment in your campaign that was fostered by the system so far? That's a great question.
I can share at least my character, dig into mine a little bit more. So in the we'll take it by you time. So in the world, so if in the campaign setting we're in right now, like magic has been gone for 100 years, which is like for human scale. Oh, sorry, I shook my computer. In human scale, it's like, oh, hey, that's like a generation. So you get a whole generation of people that like don't know magic. But I'm like, okay, this is a fantasy world where like people live there are people who live a long time. So my character is an elf who's like 175, so they've like lived a lot before with magic. And so his story is he was before he was this sort of self-aggrandized, I don't really know how to describe it, but like he was really proud of like his doing his magic thing, and like he had derived all this self-worth from it. Magic shuts off for 100 years, and he starts to hate everything, and he feels cheated by the world and whatever. And so in the psychic class, so bringing it back to how the rules play into him, in the psychic class there's conscious mind, which is like it has the most, it's closest to like a subclass where it like has the most bearing on like what features you have access to. And then there's like a subconscious mind that is basically what powers your conscious mind. So it's like, do you do charisma or intelligence? Do you and how do those psychic manifestations I talked about, like the emotional ones, how do those manifest like themselves? Like what? So basically, mechanically, my character in the 100 years between when he was a proficient spellcaster and now he's like, wait a second, how do I do telekinetic projectile? So the thing that it kind of explains his like reset on a character arc is that his subconscious mind has shifted, that like the mental anguish he was in for the last 100 years like undid his connection to his like psychic powers of his old fountain of psychic power. And so now he's like resetting, like, okay, how do I use this new fountain that I've discovered, and like acquire this thing that I value a lot. And that was like a design for my character that was like entirely inspired by the subconscious mind system and the manifestations that they do for the psychic stuff.
Yeah, I have a couple examples. Some they might even seem small, but so the chaos at first of Colin's character changing ancestors, because we kept that a secret from the other players. And so I think that was a little bit of a shock to them, or like just even seeing their confusion at first, IRL, and the character confusion of what is going on here.
There's a little
And
bit of mic is coming through Collins a little bit. Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying the stream.
especially because Colin has done a fantastic job of creating believable voices for these characters. So switching between them, yeah, it's great. And it even fought, like, probably the funniest moment that for Michael, like me personally, one of them anyway. There's been so many because you guys are just jokesters. I try to have a serious moment, and then, you know, one of you will crack a joke, probably Cameron. But there was a doppelganger, and he had made himself look like Flea and talk like Flea. And Colin and I are the tonal range of our voices is close enough that I latched onto his accent, and like we were going back and forth when he switched to that ancestor, and it made my brain overload with, like, I feel like I'm talking to myself, and it's hilarious. So that's a little thing like that. But one of my other
Steven and Stevent.
Oh yeah, that was funny. So Austin, his character is a thaumaturge, and he has his implement is a mirror. And if you haven't read Dark Archives, it lets you make a mirror copy of yourself that only has like one hit point, but that might not be literal, but it's a squish. It's not real, but he can decide which one is real if the image breaks. And he used that very strategically in an early combat where you guys could have been in big trouble. And I did that on purpose, right? That encounter was supposed to be hard, kind of setting the tone of what exists in this world that shouldn't. And the death is very serious, or, you know, like, death is a real thing in my campaigns. Usually, like, I don't like making it too easy. I want you guys to succeed, but if you do something dumb, you're gonna regret it, right? Or if you run through the adventure too fast, you're gonna regret it probably. And Austin used that mechanic incredibly well during the combat. It was entertaining because the way he described it and everything, but also, John. But also, man, were your ears burning, Austin? Because I was literally just talking about you. The way that he used it and the way that it gave them, you know, constant buffs against the bad guys is kind of one of the reasons they were able to make it through that encounter as well as they did, even though Hugh, which is Cameron's character, did have his soul sucked out of him briefly. So.
Hi, John. Sorry, it's just Austin.
Only briefly dead.
Gotta say hi.
Yeah. He was only briefly dead, right? And so, you know, those have been two examples. I'm trying to think of other ones, like the system. I don't know. I think the system has helped. That's awesome. The system has helped with the way that the players have built their characters to be in the moment too. So, like, it helps the RP. Like, it helps the role-playing portion of the game, I think, be better.
Yeah.
Because no, it's okay. Distract away.
And there's a lot of really distinctive features of classes that really, like, pull on to, like, really encourage building off of it. Like with the champion, there's all sorts of interactions with the power you serve. I forget exactly how the champions work. Like the witch has, like, their whole familiar thing, and there's this kind of, it's kind of implied in the witch's rules that you don't have full control over the familiar, but it's like kind of an emissary of your patron. And so you could have it where the person is like, they're out of their depth, and there's this I imagine Neo in the Matrix when he's like getting the call from Morpheus. Like you could have you're just some dude who works in an office, and all of a sudden this patron's like, look, you got to do this or you're going to die. And like that, you can there's so many different distinct interesting things about how the like classes and the whole ABCs you talked about earlier, how all those can come together. You can make it helps you generate a unique, interesting character.
That's awesome, Austin. And yeah, that's a great point, Chris. To that point, also, I was distracted by Austin talking about John having those little tiny hands on his hand, holding one of them.
Which ones he was talking about?
Yeah. If you, for context, you'll have to go back and watch some of our Icewind Dale stuff on YouTube. But to that point, even being, early on, the first couple sessions we did, something I explained, and this is another kind of difference in D&D. Even at level 1, you're heroic. You're pretty heroic. Like the things you can do. When you're level 1 in Pathfinder, you're a lot more squishy. Like it's like you just came off the farm. You just came from being an apprentice to a mage or something. And there's even a mechanic in the Gamemastery guide for level 0 characters, which I used a modified version of. So when we started, you guys were between 0 and 1. You were, teetering that line. That element of the system really fostered that feeling of helplessness. I hope it did, of helplessness, kind of like, for Colin, for you and your character, literally, like he was helpless, but just fostering that idea of like, oh, I need to take this a little more seriously. And I think story-wise that showed, and character-wise and player-wise that showed, of like, I need to be a little more careful. I can't just, rush into things. First episode that we did, Colin's character almost died, I think, right? From a gelatinous cube. Part of that was,
surprise and not having weapons.
Exactly. I could have set that up a little better. I wasn't satisfied with how that all went down.
So, I mean, it did set a tone of like, hey, things that you may consider safe aren't safe, and things going on that you don't understand, and it works out. Yep. Yeah, Austin's comment on having your friend lose their soul in front of you is quite a sight. And to imagine being like the world was what, like imagine if in your life it's like, okay, by the way, magic is real and your friend is dying because of it. It's like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? No, hey, you're okay. My dog is freaking out. He heard a noise or something, and now hey, it's okay. You want to say hi to everybody? You can say hi. Hi.
Hello, doggo.
Yep. Hi. You're okay. A wild dog appears. He rolled a critical success on his stealth check because he was suddenly just at my side. Stealth. Oh, that's another difference that I forgot about for the differences section. Is stealth works differently. There are hidden roles that are recommended and preferred in the Pathfinder system that I think also help foster the story. Because essentially it has the game master make a roll behind the screen or just privately to keep it a little more believable for the player too. Like, I don't know what I don't know. And so, if you roll a 20 or higher, and I still say you don't know something, I have a feeling as a player that's going to make you sus, right? Like it's going to be like, that's cap. But if I roll that and I just tell you like, no, you don't know anything, that feels different. And I do like that. And I've done that several times to you guys so far. And you haven't even known. Well, I mean, Chris, I think you picked up on it one time when I kept making rolls and somebody said, what does he do? Or, I don't like this. I think Colin was like, I don't like that. And Chris rightfully pointed out, even though I didn't confirm, he's probably making stealth versus perception, which is exactly what I was doing. I do both of those roles privately for you to see if you are actually adequately sneaking past things or if you're noticed and to what degree and everything. So
and
a lot of fun.
Yeah, and in the not needing to improvise your own rules thing, Pathfinder will regularly say like, "Oh, this should be a blind roll done by the DM," which is, I think, is good that the rules say that's what it is, because otherwise you find yourself in situations where it's like, as a player, you feel cheated because the DM wants to roll your deception versus their insight, but not let you know what you got. And so it's like, you as a player, you feel like you're being robbed of you feel like you have the right to know how good your roll was, but it doesn't play narratively very well. And so Pathfinder, having established that, hey, the DM does this in secret, means that you don't have to break a player expectation. Because something that I'm really passionate about is players should be able to make decisions based upon how the rules work, and then it should work that way. So like when you have custom rules, it's like, oh hey, there's this magic table you got to roll on or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. I just got to know that because I don't want to be there and like, okay, I'm gonna do all this thing. I've got my master plan, and then I cast haste. It's like, well, actually, haste doesn't work right now because of thing. It's like that's really bad as a player to like be in a situation where it's like, okay, cool, my whole plan is invalidated because something that my character would have known, I as a player did not know. And having rules cover all of those things already means that a player can say, oh, I know that I can do this really cool maneuver and have some like rules thing played out and feel confident that that's going to actually execute, as long as there isn't like some circumstance that it like really forbids it.
I would add, the addendum I would add to that is just to make sure with your your game master, like those rules do work, or that thing does work, or like, because we had that exact thing happen, like as I was trying to explain, I hadn't done a good enough job explaining that magic is not working, and or how long magic won't be working for, or things like that. So just don't always assume that every rule always add, like if there's a very specific thing that you want to do, always ask, because also then you don't catch your poor game master off guard by like, oh, that's right, that's a rule that I forgot existed or hadn't read or anything like that as well.
And like both, and that comes with a level of cooperation from both players and DMs, because DMs, you got to understand that your player, you've got 5 players already in the book. There's a chance that one of them may have read something you didn't, or like players understanding that your DM is just a human and they're working with a lot of players. So like there's a bit of mutual grace and understanding. This goes for every RPG system, or really just life in general, to say it that way. Where it's like, hey, we're all trying to have fun, and maybe the compromise can go either way depending on what it is, and just not like freak out about stuff. But Pathfinder provides a concrete set of rules, so you don't have to have a competition saying, well, I think this is more fair, or I think this makes more sense. Like you can just say, no, the rules say this, and we'll work from there.
You might get be able to tell that Chris is a little black and white
fan.
rules. Yeah.
Well, I think
there's a question. How often are you finding you use non-perception based initiatives such as stealth? We have used that a few times. Depending on the situation, the way that I set it up personally is I give them the choice of like, okay, how are you trying to approach this situation? Cool. Well, I need you to roll perception based on X. And so far, it's just been
roll initiative based on.
sorry, initiative based on X, which in this case has either been perception or stealth. We haven't really come up to any other
Intimidation.
circumstance.
That'd be hilarious to do initiative based on
Intimidation.
or stuff like that.
Don't let Cameron hear this part. But yeah, it is a cool function that you can change your, the modifier for how you get into initiative can change depending on the circumstance, the situation. Stealth, perception are the most common. Another that totally derailed me. That's an inside joke that I can't give context for because of that would make this a mature rated stream. And I don't want to do that.
Right. Yes.
If you're on Reddit, you've probably seen the meme that this came from. That's all I'll say. But so yeah, that's a difference. And another worthwhile difference too is some of the skills are some of your skills and your skill checks are going to be different. So like there's not a direct investigation skill anymore, right? And so that's actually the thing that I have to remind myself of the most, having switched from D&D to Pathfinder, is my gut when you guys are like, oh, I want to do this thing, is to just say, oh yeah, roll for investigation. And I've done it a few times and then been like, oh, no, there's not an investigation skill. And so, figuring out what those differences are. But as a whole, like just to reiterate, if you're just not joining us, Pathfinder is pretty easy to learn. The core rulebook can seem intimidating. It's really thick, but really just like 10%, a little more than 10% of that book probably is rules total between, for game mastering and for playing. The rest of it is how you make your character, how to make your character exactly who you want, how you want, with what backgrounds and then everything to make that person exactly how you want them to be. Yeah, it's awesome. I like it. Even before all of this stuff with OGL, I liked it. And I think it's a superior system, but that's just me. And a lot of people agree with me.
Superior at things. Like 5e is a very if everybody's just cool with improvising whatever, or like people are like, if rules aren't a huge thing for people, then like 5e can just let you go like, yeah, sure, whatever, like this is a thing, fine. And like 5e is the like, you can get up to speed in like 10 minutes being introduced to the game, like action, bonus action, move, free actions, you have health, armor class, spell, saves. Congratulations, you can play a character. Which there's obviously more depth to that, but 5e doesn't.
Well, like, when I say that, Chris, too, part of me saying that is I think Pathfinder's more balanced.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so
yes. Yeah. It's yes. Totally. Yeah. And
yeah, thanks for joining us. If you can come back and watch the archive of this stream, hopefully it's helpful to you. Pathfinder is really balanced in my opinion, and in my experience so far. In D&D, building encounters, for example. So this is going to be a little bit of a more game master specific tangent for a second. But this is called Getting Started, right? And we want to help everybody get started, players, game masters alike. And so encounter building is a lot more simple to me in Pathfinder, because I can trust that if I have this book, that I can flip it open and see that, okay, cool. Let's see. Well, this seems crazy. It's called a Fortune Eater. Looks like this. It's a creature 7. So I know that if the 4 of you in my party, like the 4 of you are level 7, I can throw this at you and it's probably going to be hard. And there's the action economy would dictate that it's still, even being hard, it would be easier for the 4 of you. But I know that I can trust, more accurately anyway, the balance of things, the balance of creatures and items and weapons and everything. So
Yeah.
I think it's more balanced. But we'll do another video on that, and we'll also do another video on building a character sheet next Saturday. We'll walk through making your first character, and we'll do that 3 different ways to show you, first and foremost, how to do it on paper. How do you build a character step by step from the core rules, or whatever sources you're using? Do it on paper first. That way you understand what you're doing, what numbers go where, and how you're. The big thing, especially for Pathfinder, for me, for doing that, is it lets you understand exactly where your all of your data and your scores are coming from. So exactly what your AC is, or your HP, because if you just throw it into Path Builder, for example, it'll come out with a final product, right? It'll give you what your hit points are, but you might not understand how you got there. And so I just want to make sure that if you're getting started, you understand why you have 23 hit points, because a portion of that's coming from your ancestry, and a portion of that's coming from your class, and maybe even your background. So, like if it gives you a boost to your constitution. And so just a good, and it'll be a good refresher for you guys, because I told Colin and Austin yesterday, I want you guys to transcribe your character sheets to paper, just in case, like if, for some reason Foundry isn't working or something, but having that reminder of like, oh yes, this is,
I don't know, in case like the website gets overloaded and shuts down for a time, something like that. Who knows?
Yeah, and you can't unsubscribe. And different topic.
Just from an influx of new and excited users.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll go through paper character sheets next week. We'll go through Path Builder next week, and we'll go through Foundry next week. Foundry is not free. It is a one-time purchase, but I think it's worth it if you need a virtual tabletop, but also so far it's the best character manager for Pathfinder.
And if you like to tinker, some people really just want a solution that just you open it up and it does the thing,
which Foundry can do.
Yeah. Yes. I haven't seen the Pathfinder module for it, but I know that there is you do need some level of like, what's what I'm looking for? Tenacity. Like I feel like you need to be prepared to like do a thing like Foundry, but like, because like you've got to host it yourself, and that's a lot of things that like people aren't.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't have to. You can
yeah.
You can run it locally. We run it through the one that I run for us is through DigitalOcean. Pretty sure Chris has set one up through Microsoft. Mm-hmm. But it's a great tool. We use it every week. It's what their character sheets are currently in that we use for inventory management, character sheet management, for digital maps. Even we play in person, but we use it still for that currently. And again, it's just recapping the whole thing we've gone over so far. Pathfinder has a low barrier to entry, in my opinion. You can find the whole rule set for free at Archives of Nethys, which all
free on purpose, not like pirated.
Yeah, it's not pirated. I just dropped that in the chat again. And so this would let you read through how to get started. It even it includes the open portion of text from the rules. And don't be daunted. I know 5e is known for being easy. Pathfinder's more crunchy, but that doesn't mean it's harder. That just means there's extra layers to it, in my opinion. And so don't be daunted by that, because it's just as easy to learn. And honestly, if not easier, depending on where you're starting from, it might be if you've played some other role-playing games, it's going to be easier for you to learn than 5e. And if you've never played a tabletop role-playing game, you're going to be able to pick it up, I promise. Like it, the community is awesome. If you're in the Reddit, or if you are in Discords, like everyone has always been really nice. There are always those outliers that are, trolls. Yeah. I do find there's not a lot of gatekeeping that I've seen in Pathfinder. But you're always going to have trolls, but like, feel free to ask questions. We have a Discord you can hop in. I made a channel this week called Pathfinder Discussion. And here I can even drop an invite real quick to our Discord server. Because I forgot to set up the the cloud bot to automatically periodically do that stuff. But here's a Discord link. Feel free to join our server. I made that channel so we can talk about this topic. I'll probably make just another section that is getting started with Pathfinder, so we can talk about the different, we can do whatever, make a section for players, game masters, answer questions. But my heart here is like, I want it to be as easy as possible for people to get into this game, especially if they're, for reasons coming from D&D, just reasons, no specific reasons. But I think it's just as good or better in every category. And it took me long enough to convince my party of that, but I'm glad that a lot of people are coming around now. So yeah. Thanks for being here. I don't know if the two of you have any closing thoughts on getting started with Pathfinder, but we've covered a lot.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think I have anything this week, which just means we have more content for next time whenever I figure it out.
Yeah, I would say that Pathfinder's another. I was gonna say it's just another system. It doesn't like magically solve problems if you guys at a table just actually hate each other. Like, go see a therapist. Like, so like it's not gonna fix things moving. Like, it's not gonna make you guys better at RPGs or whatever. But what it will let you do is have a great system that, like, honestly is not as scary as a lot of people make it to be, and actually solves a lot of problems without causing a ton. And also lets you support a company that actually shares the values that you have as a person who pays for and plays games. So it does, I can say categorically, it solves that problem. If you've seen Paizo's Open RPG Creative License, the ORC, that is the official acronym for it, which I love. That stands for a lot that we constantly see reflected in the community. And so if you're looking to put your money where your mouth is and try out another RPG system, Pathfinder is an excellent option. Coming from someone who is apprehensive of Pathfinder to start. So I had a lot of reasons. I really liked 5e. I thought, the action system was, unnecessarily whatever. And I've it's really grown on me, and I've started to see a lot of what I really like about it. So I strongly recommend that you also give it a try.
Yeah, well said. I think definitely Paizo cares.
Yeah.
And they're showing it. They're showing it. Like, they're willing to stick up for everybody. And that means a lot to me, having, bought almost all of their books on hard copy last year. And just knowing, like, hey, we're willing to litigate this in court if Wizards does this, and we're releasing our own license. That, because we, this just one little self-promotion thing, I guess, is like, there's content that we're going to make that we want to release to people. And so knowing that there's a company that cares that we own the content that we're making, that they actually want us to own the content we're making, that means a lot. So, but that's been a lot to cover. We've been almost going for 2 hours. So I'll leave it here. But thank you so much for joining us. We've had a ton of people in and out of the stream, both here and I think even on Twitter. And so if you've been watching this on Twitter, feel free to tweet me. You can find me at the Michael Green, TheMicheal Green, like the color. My mom made and my parents made sure that I was going to have to spell that the rest of my life. And so thanks, but it's okay. And yeah, feel free to tweet me, tweet any of us. You can find us all on Twitter. And let us know if there's anything that you want to see in the next segment of Getting Started with Pathfinder. And we'll make sure to throw that in there, answer your questions. And this is for you guys. So
yeah. And
until
also
then,
the Discord and Twitter.
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of that.
yeah.
We'd love to, especially right now while people are trying to, people are maybe trying to find a new RPG home. That there's definitely people willing to help guide you and share what our own journey has been, because we just happenstantially also chose this path, a few months ago, and got a chance to get a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah. This has been great. It's a good refresher for me too, because, now that we're in the moment, sometimes I forget about some of the smaller subtext and rules and everything. So you can find us on Discord. That link is in the chat. You can find me on Twitter at the Michael Green. And until next time, we will see you guys in those places. Bring us your questions. Hopefully we can answer them, but if not, at least we'll try. So thanks, guys. And we will catch you next week on Wednesday. Actually, we'll be live. And you can catch our weekly stream where they're trying to survive a world with no magic. So you can that's on YouTube.
And figuring out how to
at Table Fables.
3 days of our life disappearing.
I'm glad you guys keep remembering that. But we'll see you guys on Wednesday. Come watch. Come be part of the stream. It's built to be interactive, so there may or may not. It just depends on the episode. Be moments where you get to be part of the game. So until then, we'll see you.